angels waging war in the unseen realm. Global events fulfilling biblical prophecy. Eternal life. What lies beyond mortality? From analyzing the paranormal from a biblical worldview to the discussion of cutting-edge science and technology, conspiracy, discovery, special investigative reports. Unafraid to explore the challenging issues facing humanity. Welcome to another edition of Skywatch TV.
There were giants in the earth in those days, and by some, they are referred to as the Cloudeaters. Welcome to Skywatch TV. I'm Derek Gilbert. This is the second week in a special four-part investigative series on the forthcoming collaborative work, book and DVD set, the DVD part 3 of the True Legends series, There Were Giants, and the first book, co-authored by two of our guests here, despite their knowing each other for nearly 2 decades. This is the first time their names appeared together on the cover of a book. Unearthing the Lost World of the Cloudeaters, compelling evidence of the incursion of giants, their extraordinary technology, and imminent return. We welcome back to Skywatch TV Tom Horn, Steve Quayle, and Timothy Alberino. Gentlemen, in our first program, and I have a tendency to do this as a host because I love this job and get so into the material that sometimes I skip ahead and assume, which I shouldn't, because Sharon's told me this for years, people can't hear what's inside my head.
But I understand you.
I know. Doesn't that frighten you?
Yeah, I couldn't resist.
For the audience, so we probably should explain the term Cloudeaters. Where does it come from? Who uses it?
Yeah, well, when we met in the desert Southwest just a few months ago now with the leaders of the Pueblo tribes, this was a term that they continued to use, and they explained to us that this is what their elders used to refer to the giants that were on American soil in early American history. They're so tall that their heads are up among the clouds, so they called them the Cloudeaters.
So is that what led to the decision to then meet with the Native American elders of those tribes?
Well, not so much that, but what led to it was you cannot deal with Native American legends throughout the United States into Mesoamerica, South America, Latin America, and not encounter the giants, whether you're encountering Viracocha, Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan. What most people don't realize, no place in any South American writing do any of the quote civilizations that, by the way, we'll get into cannibalism and human sacrifice. They don't claim they built these structures that are attributed to them. And what was fascinating is, as I followed the trail of the cannibals, and this is a true story, the cannibal trail, it went all the way up into Texas, went into the Ohio River Valley, the Mound people, ritual cannibalism, and I maintain that too. It was based on starvation, and it was based on the idea that you draw life force from that which you cannibalize, okay? And it's a very interesting thing. So when Tim was in Sardinia, we don't know for a fact, but they even have a ritual where they're, using babies, and somebody's pouring like sauce on them. Now, the reason that's important is because cannibal comes from the word, Canaan, the land of Canaan, and Baal worship. And now what do we have? We have the Arch of Baal. By the way, the Arch of Baal, just for everybody, or Baal, or Baal, is basically a stargate in itself. The Arch was initially it was identified with stargates. And when Tim and the crew were down in South America, wouldn't you tell the story about Amaramuro, because it's relative to the desert Southwest with all those guys sitting there making all the noise to try and open the gate?
Well, we're finding that the indigenous peoples all over the earth talk about stargates. And some places, like in Peru, the Inca were rumored to be able to, in some cases, activate what we would call a stargate. And there's certainly lots of legends associated with stargates, entities coming through their various demigods and so forth, coming through gates. And so certainly this is apparent in the desert Southwest as well. It's ubiquitous. We find what we consider to be a stargate glyph all over the earth, which is the spiral glyph that we find everywhere, by the way. at Aramumuru, in Bolivia at the Pumapunku ruins. You find it in the Cusco region. You find it in the desert Southwest. This is a ubiquitous symbol. And a lot of people say, well, it's the spiral of life. That may be one interpretation. But it also apparently is associated with the idea of some kind of a portal opening, things coming out of it. And so that's certainly the case at Aramumuru, the legend surrounding Aramumuru. So it's very interesting to see how, whenever you're dealing with the indigenous peoples, how similar their myths and legends are, and how it all relates to the supernatural world, stargates, giants, and these kind of topics.
And it goes back to Babel with the Akkadian words Bab Ilu, meaning gate of the gods.
The gate of the gods, at Amanaki, all of the oldest words, all of the oldest terms connected to that symbolism and that reference is that this was a gateway to the gods. Basically, that's what it is. Even in the Old Testament, where Jacob lays down, has a dream, he sees angels ascending and descending. Some people, the King James says a ladder, so we get this idea that they're going up and down a ladder. But actually, the Hebrew there can imply kind of like a vortex, a spinning, a spiral staircase is more maybe close related to the symbolism of that. But what happens when he wakes up? He says, there is a gate here to the house of God, a gateway, a doorway, a portal, an opening. And Dr. Don Mose, one of the elders in the Navajo tribe, he literally translates that spiral. He sent us to where the petroglyphs are that show the giant spiral. He said, go there and you'll see the story of our earliest history where the spiral opened, the giant reptilian being that's right next to it with a halo around its head came through and began deceiving people. They went into their kivas. They started practicing sorcery, pharmakia, Revelation chapter 9, and the gates of the earth opened and the giants came up out of the earth. And that's literally, he said that is the oldest story from among the medicine men in the Navajo Nation. So that corresponds with what the Apache told us, so what they all told us. Now, one of the things that people are going to find ultimately fascinating in the book Unearthing the Lost World of the Cloudeaters is the challenge that is actually supported by the Smithsonian, that the history needs to be rewritten with regard to the Anasazi. One of the big questions, the pre-Pueblo Indians, Mesa Verde, they built the cliffside dwellings, Hovenweep, the giant defensive towers, but at Chaco Canyon, they're just living above the earth and peaceful like they're farming or something, right? So the way that the Indian tribes, the modern Pueblo, prefer to tell this story. And so do, like all of the parks departments and whatever, is that they started out, in Mesa Verde, building these cliffside dwellings because of an extended drought. They finally slowly migrated away from there. They went to Hovenweep, places like that. Then they wind up at Chaco Canyon. And by the way, the tribal elders that we met with, they said, if you want to understand Chaco Canyon, think of it as your biblical Babylon. That's literally what they said. This was America's Babylon, right? Wow. And
cool,
but I had a working theory, just based on several years now of talking with the elders among those tribes, that the history had been intentionally reversed for reasons that maybe are covert, right? That they were trying to control our understanding of American history because, like the Powell Doctrine and the Smithsonian, they use obfuscation. They don't want to talk about giants. When they find the giants, they want to hide them because it tinkers with Darwinian evolution. It contradicts him, and furthermore, it supports the Bible history as opposed to the narrative they want to create. So I had a theory. I said, I think it's backwards. The evidence suggests they started at Chaco Canyon, peaceful farmers, they're doing their thing. Then some extraordinary challenge, something terrified them. They flee Chaco Canyon, they wind up in Hovenweep building their giant defensive towers with their little arrow cutouts, right? And there's evidence there that something huge smashed giant holes, not just decay where the towers fell down. Something knocked giant holes. So was this weaponry? Was it a giant fist? I don't know. But there was some stuff there that we can't explain in our history. Then from there, they fled to the canyons in Mesa Verde, and that was their last stand, building these defensive places to try to escape whatever this gigantic, terrifying, menacing thing was. Meanwhile, Something's happening to their women. They're starting to give birth to children that have 6 fingers, 6 toes, that are extraordinarily large, 2 rows of teeth, distorted mandibles. And the Indians, when they're burying them, they're putting jewelry around their additional digits, their polydactyly. They're starting to worship them like they're the offspring of the gods. Well, we unearthed information from some of the earliest reports at the Smithsonian from their own website, in their archives, that support that theory, that actually turn the story around and say, no, they started at Chaco Canyon and then they fled something horrifying, something terrifying. And there are skeletal remains that have been literally ripped to shreds, and extraordinary evidence of ritual cannibalism that seemed to develop almost overnight. But we connected this back to Mesoamerica. How did we do that? Because all of a sudden they have the scarlet macaw here, the tropical birds. They had to migrate somehow down into America. Also, their pottery has distinctive paintings on it that are Aztec and Mayan in origin. So a doorway was opened, and down into early America, something came. The Apaches say, all of a sudden, the peaceful farmers that are here, all of a sudden, they said giants came. They're coming up, and they're talking about them coming through Mesoamerica in the United States. They're cannibalizing the people. They're raping the women. The Indians start crying out to God. That, by the way, they call them, I think, the Tartums, and they say they were led by an evil ruler called Evilkin, and they said they are so large that they're using the tree limbs from the trees for toothpicks, right? And so they begin calling out to the God of heaven. What does he do? He sends a universal flood that comes and sweeps all of the giants away into the mounds. Some of them, their feet are still sticking up out of the sands, right? And so they go there and they bury them. Years later, fast forward, the Smithsonian comes in. They begin excavating all those giant bones and spiriting them away into some of their warehouses, where admittedly there are over 150 million artifacts. Many of them, according to the Smithsonian, are what they call anomalous, unexplainable.
150 million.
It's like that warehouse at the end of Indiana Jones.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think the point that is becoming more, we talk about the days of Noah. This is why it's relevant. Some people say, oh, it just means there's violence there. No, it was way different than that, it required God to wipe out everything on the planet. But now cannibalism is coming back into the headlines, especially with a Fox television special or series going to be on cannibalism, and just the kind of a cannibalistic comedy. And now it's becoming so mainstream that it is the appetite of demons expressed through humans. And what's interesting, the days of Noah, this is what the normal diet was. I mean, what did Joshua and Caleb bring back the report? For the land devoured its inhabitants. We were as grasshoppers in our eyes, and so we were in theirs. And so the thing is that when Tom and I started on talk radio, not together, but he was one of my first guests when I really got rolling. And, because no offense, but you were the only guy that I enjoyed talking to because you were interesting. And that's not flattery, it's just true. So now we're faced with genetic Armageddon on the genetic manipulation. We're faced on becoming Soylent Green, and now that's a food wafer made out of human beings. And now you've got the justification, even the Smithsonian. This is the most strange thing I've ever seen. Talking about, what does human flesh taste like and stuff. I'm wondering, I said, maybe all those giants aren't, maybe they hold a conference in the basement of some hidden away warehouse of 150 million artifacts. But I mean, what people have got to understand, it's coming back into the not only the psyche, but they're making it cannibalism is cool. All of the perversion of pedogate, all of the open Satanism, all of the open, child sacrifice. I mean, it's Phoenicians, it's Canaanites. And we've got now the temples of Baal. I want, what I want to see? I want to see the faces on those guys when somebody who's hungry comes through it, and all the world's leaders are going there, and the first thing the giant says is lunch. Okay, and I know that sounds a little facetious, but what is it? These people long to bring this stuff back. And even though we're even the desert Southwest, I asked them, why do you guys still venerate and worship? These guys are the ones that wiped out your ancestors, And the only thing I could come away with, Tim, I don't know what your impression was, but because they were giants, they were supernatural beings. Is that kind of what you were left with, or what were your...
Yeah, and it's interesting how also the indigenous people of the United States, but then also when you go to like Sardinia, which we go to in our film, you find this narrative of the worship of the giants. That the giants are being venerated, that their bones are being worshipped. In fact, when we were in the desert Southwest, we asked them point blank, "Do you know?" Meaning the Pueblo Indian elders, "Do you know where the bones of the giants are buried?" And they paused for a moment, and one of them said, "Yes, we know." They were very reluctant to say that.
Matter of factish, but reluctant.
Yeah.
But
Yes,
there's
we
also
know.
there's also and I know we got to go to a break, but when we come back from the break, I'd like to also follow up on Steve's comments about how cannibalism is tied to the sin of the Watchers and to what happened here in the United States.
Right, and how in fact it's changing what it means to humans.
This is a big time revelation, okay? And I believe God has reserved this revelation for this time. I don't believe people 20, 30, 40 years ago could have handled it. Maybe some forward, but it's so critical. It's so timely, and it's so neon lights in the sky, if you will, flashing. Here's what's coming. Get ready. I want my people prepared. I don't want them destroyed.
Evidence of cannibalism in the desert Southwest tied to giants on North American soil. Our conversation with Steve Quayle, Tom Horn, and Timothy Alberino continues next on Skywatch TV.
You know the textbook history of America, but secretive institutions have worked behind the scenes to conceal a darker secret.
There were giants in the earth in those days.
Cloud Eaters, as the tribal leaders knew them, not only existed, they brought ritual cannibalism and pre-Columbian dragon-worshipping interlopers to ancient American soil. And then they took women and fathered hideous monsters. Their secret has been known to academics and underground societies for hundreds of years. And these legions know something else too that's been suppressed until now. The date when the Cloud Eaters shall return. Over the last year, Stephen Quayle and Dr. Thomas R. Horn met secretly with the leaders of the Hopi, Zuni, and Uti Nation tribes. Clandestine locations were pointed out to them, where the giants are kept and will rise again. They examined the documentation of deified, six-toed, six-fingered, double-row-teeth mutants buried on American soil. They were told where the stargates are that reveal the future to medicine men before it happens. And they uncovered what's been hidden in plain sight by the Great Smithsonian Institute for more than 200 years. Now, for the first time in their decades of investigative work together, legendary radio veterans and prolific authors Steve Quayle and Tom Horn pull out all the stops to reveal a truth that demands the history and destiny of America be re-examined. Nothing will be held back on what is now indisputably the greatest achievement of their life's work together in unearthing the lost world of the Cloud Eaters. Join Stephen Quayle and Dr. Thomas Horn on their historic journey and discover ancient civilizations where the past and future intersect. You will encounter the pre-flood architecture of the Giant Kings. What caused the Anasazi to disappear overnight? And the sacred mountains where the giant bones are kept. Coming this May from Defender Publishing, Unearthing the Lost World of the Cloud Eaters, compelling evidence of the incursions of giants, their extraordinary technology, and imminent return.
After decades of investigative work together, the moment we've been waiting for is finally here. Legendary authors Stephen Quayle and Dr. Thomas Horn reveal what is now indisputably the greatest achievement of their life's work together in the Unearthing the Lost World of the Cloud Eaters special collection. When you purchase this once-in-a-lifetime special offer, you'll receive the brand new There Were Giants documentary film. In this groundbreaking full-length DVD, you'll travel with Stephen Quayle and Dr. Thomas Horn to the historical clandestine places where giants are actually buried on American soil. You'll discover the ancient locations of tribal stargates and what's been hidden in plain sight by the Great Smithsonian Institute for more than 200 years. Plus, Defender Publishing is proud to introduce the new collaborative companion book, Unearthing the Lost World of the Cloudeaters. Walk with Stephen Quayle and Dr. Thomas Horn as they meet secretly with the leaders of the Hopi, Zuni, and Ute Nation tribes to learn about the pre-flood architecture of the giant kings. Learn why the ancient Anasazi disappeared overnight, who the dragon-worshipping giant invaders of early America were, and how they taught natives ritual cannibalism to change their DNA into fit extensions for spirits of dead giants, and so much more. In addition, when you order the Unearthing the Lost World of the Cloudeaters special collection, you'll also receive Shadow Hand, the over 24-hour, never-before-offered Steve Quayle and Tom Horn definitive audio series on CD. This brand new audio collection discloses the terrifying truth behind the WikiLeaks emails and the push for official disclosure of so-called aliens in 2017. And as a bonus, the new Shadowhand audio series includes the most requested collections ever produced by Steve Quayle and Thomas Horn. The Coming Zombie Apocalypse, As It Was in the Days of Noah, Psychotronic Warfare, and The Coming Replacement Humans, over 24 hours on audio CD. But that's not all. Also included in this special offer while supplies last, 2 brand new free gift books for your library or to give away as gifts. Sold separately, this amazing collection represents a total value of over $175. Yours for only $39.95 beginning in May. Don't miss this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to own the Unearthing the Lost World of the Cloudeaters special collection, available exclusively at the Skywatch TV store. Order online now or call 1-844-750-4985.
We have more of this discussion available as web-exclusive content, interviews that could not be broadcast on our network schedule because of lack of time. 6 additional interviews, you'll find them only at skywatchtv.com and the Skywatch TV channels on Roku and on YouTube. We're talking with Timothy Alberino, Steve Quayle, and Tom Horn about Unearthing the Lost World of the Cloudeaters and There Were Giants, the forthcoming DVD from Gen 6 Productions. The practice of cannibalism by these giant inhabitants of the desert Southwest, the idea that this is something that is being brought back into the mainstream consciousness through pop culture. There's some science behind this that's really disturbing. Tom, you've been digging into this.
Yeah, there is some science behind it, but let me say, remind people that may not know this, that the ideal of ritual cannibalism, meaning that it's not people eating people because they're starving to death, right? They're doing it for ritualistic purposes. This actually started with the sin of the Watchers. Because don't forget, what did the Watchers want to do? And the New Testament talks about this, the book of Enoch talks about this. They wanted to leave their fixed habitation. They wanted to leave their plane of existence.
Right.
And somehow they knew through the manipulating genetics, using the DNA of women, you know, they came down, they intercourse with women, they give birth to mutations, right? These are not beings that were created in the image of God.
Right.
So they use genetics to create something into which they can become incarnate. That's what the Watchers wanted to do. But notice that the minute that the Watchers do that, their offspring, the giants, Enoch chapter 7, what do? They begin cannibalizing, and their appetites are voracious. But again, all around the world, this information begins to spread out. And in every ancient culture, the ideal of ritual cannibalism carried with it one primary theme. Sometimes it's called homophagia. It's the idea that through ritually cannibalizing, maybe part of your family, maybe an individual, maybe it's an enemy you took in battle, but you can assimilate their soul, their strength, their spirit, right? You can capture their essence, if you will. But in Watcher / Nephilim occultism, the idea was to create a fit extension into which these fallen angels could become incarnate. That was the gospel, according to the Watchers, right? But there's some really deep stuff about this that we're learning. Because the old ideas, before they even had the science, the old idea was that through cannibalism, they were changing their DNA. They were modifying their genetic makeup to to put themselves in tune with the underworld gods, to create a divine symmetry between them and the underworld gods. This goes back even to some of the stuff you've studied in your book, where you had this acolyte assembly of kings in the underworld,
Right.
but they're communicating with people in the upper world, and through some circumstances, they can become reincarnate. They can rise back up, the Raphaim, be healed from their death, if you will, and become embodied in a body again.
Right.
Well, we found evidence that this was also happening in early America. The idea that ritual cannibalism would put them in tune with the underworld gods. It became pleasing to those gods that came down from Mesoamerica. Kukulkan, the worship of dragons, Quetzalcoatl, or however you say it, the worship of this great dragon who demanded human sacrifice. Look at the Aztec, look at the Maya, and this was all ritualistic for the purposes of modifying your DNA. Well, now guess what? Science has come forward, and they have discovered, like in New Guinea, that where some of the tribal people there have been cannibalizing the brains of their own dead, it has modified their DNA at the germline level. It has permanently altered them and their offspring. So now we have science to support the fact that through ritual cannibalism, your genetic makeup can be modified. For what purpose? Well, the Watchers, the Giants, the occultists, they all believe. The Podesta emails and spirit cooking. It is all widespread ancient belief that started with the Watchers, that this is a way to commit sacrilege against God. It's an anti-communion, if you will. And in fact, we're not going to have time, but why does the Bible condemn the eating of blood? The eating of flesh that still has its blood within it?
The blood is
because
life.
it has an element of God.
Yeah.
God breathed into Adam. This is the life force of our blood. And these fallen entities are trying to commit the ultimate sacrilege, the ultimate blasphemy, to literally steal away the divinity, to steal the fire from the gods. These are some of the break-off ideas from this earlier, very deep occultic idea that you can bring back up these entities from the underworld. And it sounds like it actually is possible, that it can happen.
It's just as God told Noah, that for every shedding of human blood, there would be a reckoning required. Even from animals, there would be a reckoning required for the shedding of human blood. This is groundbreaking stuff. The first book ever co-authored by Tom Horn and Steve Quayle, Unearthing the Lost World of the Cloudeaters, compelling evidence of the incursion of giants, their extraordinary technology, and imminent return. And the accompanying DVD, There Were Giants. We've got 2 more weeks in this fascinating and disturbing discussion. Important information. Please stay with us. Timothy Alberino, Steve Quayle, Tom Horn. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is Skywatch TV.